Hello.
Hi. Hi everyone. I'm Ihan from the Welfare Task Force Activities and Events team. So before we start our session, I would like to simply introduce who we are. Welfare Task Force is a welfare group created by students. It's for students who are studying abroad to better support each other as a community during these challenging times and even the post-pandemic period. So in this session today, we're having Zikri Azman here to share some of his experience in Scotland. So Zikri, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello. I'm Zikri. I'm currently studying in University of Dundee, that's in Scotland, and I'm in my fourth year. So thank you for having me.
All right. So may I ask, what is the current situation in Dundee, Scotland, in terms of social distancing measures and policies?
Well, so currently, like we are in phase 3 of the lockdown, you would say. So it's kind of like that moment where we are moving out of the lockdown phase, I guess. And in terms of like how things are really going quite well. Like everything kind of starting to move towards returning to normality to some sense. So you can meet people outside, you can meet people indoors, although in like with certain restrictions and with a limited number of people and so on. University starts opening up again, and even like non-essential shops are reopening. So things are going quite well at the moment, really.
So is it really necessary for all of you to wearing masks to go outside or even indoors?
So it is mandatory to wear mask in a area where you can't practice social distancing. So in shops, at places like that, you do need to wear mask. Even in universities, like currently, because I'm already kind of like starting my classes, and even then, you need to wear masks basically all the time while you're in the university. But in terms of like being in public, it's not exactly mandatory. Like just say you're walking around, but if you are going into places where you can't practice social distancing, then it is mandatory. And just to be clear, that it's also in Scotland at least, it's not mandatory to wear a face mask. It's more about a face covering. So even if you wear like cloth face mask, that would still do you just fine.
Okay, so do you recommend students to,
yeah, I think it's like, I think one of the questions like following from there, since I think you actually stayed on for the whole 3 months ever since the lockdown, is there any like particular reason for you to choose that, like to choose to stay on instead of like flying back as most Malaysians do?
So my classes tends to end quite late, like almost every year. But so I wasn't planning to go home in the first place, like before the whole lockdown thing comes into action. But I forgot when it was, but there was like this period where everyone seems to kind of like try to race home. I think it was that moment where there was a rumor going around like Malaysia might go into lockdown. And at that moment, a month of my class after my exam was cancelled. So I was considering to go back. But at the same time, I think like it was just kind of like a very uncertain time. Even the university don't know like what you're gonna do with the exams and how like things gonna work from there on. So I was just thinking that even if I'm home, I might not have the access if I want to do my exams and stuff. So I was thinking, and also like at that moment, I was still I was moving out from my old house, so I was like settling my accommodation. And then that moment, it just seems like a best thing to do, just to kind of like stay in Scotland and just to be safe. And yeah, basically that's why I'm here for the whole 3 months.
right?
And actually following from there, I think some of our students ask that then for now, because some of them they actually return home during the lockdown. And then they're asking, like, I think this student is actually based in Glasgow, but hopefully the situation is in Scotland is quite the same. Like they're asking that should they actually return to Glasgow to study or like stay in Malaysia for now? I think especially classes will be starting during August and September.
in all honesty, I don't think you would have any, if your university do ask you to come back, I don't see any problem with it because things are going quite well. Like, I don't think we have a lot of cases, at least, and no death within these few days. There was like a small cluster in Glasgow somewhere yesterday, I think, but generally things are not as bad. So I wouldn't see it interfere with your studies, honestly. So if your university gonna say like you can come back, I really don't see any problem why you shouldn't. Yeah.
Thank you.
So how have you been coping and spending your time during the lockdown? Like, are you playing games or revise your studies or anything?
That's definitely one of it. I spend most of my time just gaming. I wish I could be productive, but I wasn't. But I think like for me personally, I'm the kind of person who like really spend most of my time with friends. Like I like to go out, I like to be like, visit each other, that kind of stuff. And obviously like that wasn't happening during the lockdown period, not only because most of the Malaysians go back or like even like local friends who went back, but also because you really just can't meet them because you have to isolate yourself, right? So that kind of like take a little bit of time to kind of like adjust. And obviously you have to find a way to spend your time. And I think throughout the lockdown, I really just kind of like cycling through different things, just spending my time. So there was a period I just like gaming all day long, binge gaming a few days, binge Netflix a few days, that kind of stuff. Try to pick up hobbies, try to learn some new skill. And I think like nothing really sticks, but before you know it, it was already the end. Like my classes is already starting, so I guess it works quite well.
All right.
Actually,
So do you
that's
think,
very good. That's very
yeah,
good to
very
hear,
good.
especially like you are keeping safe
Yeah.
and everything is okay. Yeah, yeah.
So are there any, do you find there is adequate supplies of face masks or sanitizer, gloves in your region? Like that? Would you
Um,
recommend students to bring back this from home, from Malaysia, I mean?
Now it's just in abundance. Like you can find it literally anywhere. Like you can get face masks, like those surgical face masks from Boots for like 15 quid for 20 packs. So I don't see why you should bring it from home unless like you want to save cost. If those kind of things are cheaper at home, then sure, you can just bring them. But I don't see why anyone would worry about in terms of like supplies, or I don't see like you would have problem getting it in Scotland. But just keep in mind, I guess, like if you are traveling from outside, and keep in mind that you have to quarantine for 14 days. So probably just kind of like bring enough supplies to last you during that period of time. But in terms of getting it here, I think there would be absolutely no problem at all.
How well do you think, like, besides, because like maybe face mask is your daily utilities, how about your
Mm-hmm.
university or maybe student union kind of support? Like, do you get any particular support from them as well?
Not that I know of at the moment, but because I'm mostly based in hospital this year, they do provide like free mask for you, even like at the entrance to the hospital. If you require one, you can get it for free. And even like some shops, really, like when you go into shops, you don't have mask, they will provide you one for free. So in terms of like, I don't see anything just yet from student union, at least not that I know of. But yeah, like at least like the one that I have in the hospital, they're quite good with it. You can just take it if you need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, like you've actually sounded like, I think it's very nice to see you actually sounded quite confident, because some of our students asked that, were you actually scared or worried when you first went into lockdown? Like, I think probably it's quite positive and everything's quite nice now, but maybe back for the
Mm.
past few months, like how is your feeling in
I think it was just like a chaotic time for everyone, right? And I think everyone lose something during that period. And some people have like a better place to land. Like, if you manage to get home, be around your families and that kind of stuff, obviously chances are you can deal with it better. But I know that not everyone might be in that situation during that time. And yeah, so I guess like people just deal with it at different extent. Like some it's easier for others and harder for some. But yeah, I think, but now, especially now that things are getting better, and to a degree, like people start walking in the streets again, bar reopening, so everything kind of like get lively, but at the same time safe. So yeah, really like no reason to worry for now, at least.
Oh, thank you.
And so from my opinion, right, before like in March, when everything's go lockdown, go close, everything. So do your parents think you need to travel back to Malaysia for safety, like because there's home, by the way, yeah.
Do you face any
They
like
do.
pressure, or maybe
from
either
your
peer
family?
pressure or even parents' pressure, or all this kind of stuff? Like, how did you actually cope with that during that time?
No, definitely. Like my parents were they were freaking out because especially during the rumors where like the lockdown's gonna happen and stuff, and things are going quite bad. Obviously, they were freaking out, but at the same time, I think it's important to kind of like think about, right, if I travel from here, transit in another country just to get home, and because I come from the East Coast, so I would have to travel again from KLIA to the East Coast. Just kind of like thinking about like, right, at that point, there's so many chances for me to kind of be exposed to the virus. So in a way, it is much safer for me to just kind of like stay here, be in my room, deal with it, rather than traveling just to get home and put a lot of people kind of like in that in a risk, I would say, to get exposed to the virus. So I think like one, obviously it was tough for them as well, but I think it's just about like talking to them, like explaining like why that wouldn't be like a good idea, and just staying put and just kind of like listening to what the government say about, like how we're gonna handle this probably the best way. So I guess like that's the step I took. But yeah, I could understand like it would be difficult, even like especially for parents, because obviously they would be worried about your well-being.
Yeah, I think I fully agree that maybe it's more like open communication, like being able to communicate like what are the worries and what is the current situation. And even like what we are doing now, I think the reason of that is to debunk all those kind of myths. Like there's so many rumors going on, but sometimes maybe just a clear communication and just ask. Maybe people who are actually still based in that area, then you can actually know a lot of stuff directly instead of going through all the different like worries, guessing,
Definitely.
and kind of like confusion in this time.
Yes,
And
definitely.
actually, there's I think one more from the students. So I think because some of them are planning either to travel back to Scotland, and then they are asking like, is there any news of Scotland closing its borders with England? So maybe some students may need to transit, I would guess. So maybe they are worried about, is it possible, or is there any news about border closing between
At the
England?
moment, from what I understand, there's none. Like there were just kind of rumors and going around, but a lot of people actually like managed to come back. Like people who are within my year who came from like overseas, and then they managed to get in no problem. But I think like some of the issue came from the fact that, so at least in Scotland, the government not gonna monitor who comes in. So it means that when you arrive, and it's mandatory for you to go through that 14 days of quarantine, but they wouldn't know. Like the government has no way of knowing who's doing what. So but in terms of like border closing, I don't see it happening now, and I don't think it's gonna happen, honestly. Just kind of like, I guess like it's really up to that person to just be responsible, and like if you do come in, quarantine itself for 40 days. But yeah.
And also I think like just make sure with your maybe the airlines and everything before you fly, just make sure that probably they will be the ones that know the most updated information in terms of border closing and whether you can travel or not, just to make sure before you travel plans on.
Yeah.
Yes. For curious, do you face any kind of racism or any unpleasant experience there?
Honestly, no. I think depending on your area as well, right? Like especially like I mean like in terms of like in Dundee, people tend to be quite nice in the first place. So like you don't, at least personally, I don't have this kind of experience. And based on like what I hear from my friends as well, like they don't really have this kind of problem. So things are quite pleasant, honestly, here. I couldn't say for any other part of Scotland or UK in terms of that, but here everything seems to be quite fine.
I think along that lines, I just think that maybe students are kind of quite anxious about coming back, about especially for the rumors. They asked that is it true that crime kind of increased around Scotland due to COVID? Do you hear anything about it?
No, like Dundee was completely safe. At least I find it completely safe during the lockdown and even now. So I don't see that should be a reason to be worried about, honestly. Yeah.
I think it's like I think crimes and everything, they usually like, it's probably like if it's happening, it usually will happen, but probably not because of COVID. And I think in the UK, probably in some hotspot regions, but I think most regions, especially in Scotland, I've been there to Scotland myself, like it's perfect, quite safe. And then, but you still need to take care of your own safety, lah. Like just take those kind of reasonable measures to protect yourself.
Yeah, just be reasonable, just be safe. But I don't see anyone doing anything more than what they would ordinarily do. So yeah, personally, I don't find it a problem at all.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I think this is quite useful for any students out there, even not in UK. So thanks for sharing with us your experience in Scotland.
No problem.
And before we end, like, do you have anything else you would like to add or any general advice that you want to give to students?
Yeah, I guess like a few things just to kind of like note if you are returning is that one, make sure like you're like be flexible with your travel plan because it's very normal. It's very likely for like your flights to get cancelled. But as long as you can get yourself to Scotland or at least the UK, I don't see there would be a problem for you to travel to like the cities that you want to go to, like Glasgow, Edinburgh, whatever. So that's one. Second is that keep in mind that you would have to quarantine for 14 days. So just kind of like plan your logistic around that. So like just make sure like when you arrive, you can get access to food and that kind of stuff. Like ask your friends maybe to get like buy grocery stock for you 14 days while you quarantine. And keep in mind as well, the delivery situation in Scotland is quite like groceries delivery is quite an abomination at the moment. It's quite tough for you to get a spot. So just keep that in mind if that's what you're planning. And also on top of that, so in Scotland, they introduced like a law, sort of like a law surrounding your student accommodation, something along the line of like you can cancel it, like you are not bound by contract, something of that sort. Like I'm not a person who stays in student accommodation, so I don't know too much about it. But if you are, and I think like people in Glasgow probably would most probably be in a student accommodation for the whole the university year. Just keep that in mind if you are looking for like a way out, for example, like you don't want to pay for the duration you're not staying in Scotland. So just keep that in mind. But other than that, not much really, because things are going quite well. And if you need to come back, I just don't see any reason why you shouldn't.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
So once again, thank you for joining us today, Zikri. There are more welfare polls and similar sessions coming up in later dates. So do check out our social media for more information. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zikri.
Thank you so much.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.